The views of this program are not necessarily the views of KJLL Radio, its management, or its sponsors. The host is solely responsible for its content. Enjoy.
The studios of KJLL 1330 The Jolt. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg program. And in a day and age when cojones are at a premium, when individuals would prefer to sit in their rooms and play 5 instruments, combine the sounds, and call that a band, the whole concept of taking chances and exploring in the most organic sense has been savaged by an unrelenting bottom-line industry. These are the realities in the early 21st century. My guest today is a product of the melting pot that existed in the 50s, 60s, and 70s and beyond. A born musician, this man became enveloped in the Puerto Rican-Cuban salsa scene in the mid-1960s and was forming the pocket for the new Afro-Cuban rhythms with pianist Mark Levine and the percussionist Don Elias in Boston. He gradually elevated to post-bop and gigged with Chick Corea, Dick Burke, Alan Schwartzberg, and Pete Yellen, among others. During the tumultuous early 70s, he became musically involved with fusion pioneers Jeremy Steig, Jan Hammer, and Don Elias. This morphed into his own massive trio called the Stone Alliance, with the aforementioned Elias and saxophonist Steve Grossman. He has been part of every cutting-edge jazz scene over the last 5 decades. He's owned his own record labels and continues to play and teach today. It is an honor to announce Gene Perla. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hi.
So I gotta ask you, when did you first start seeing Tito Puente and Tito Rodriguez live?
Oh, boy. I think I only saw Tito maybe once, once for sure, and maybe twice. I think he may have been at a Palladium. That was a very hip Latin dance club up on Broadway in Manhattan, New York. And I went up there a few times. I think he may have been playing one of those nights, but it was kind of fuzzy in my memory. But then there was another time out on Long Island, and I don't know, it had to be in the late 60s. And I went out to this, like, mini festival, and his group was playing there. And I can tell you, someone had told me about his bass player, Bobby Rodriguez,
sure,
who was just an amazing player, and that as jazz musicians tap their feet, on 1, 2, 3, 4, or sometimes they beat in 2 if it's a 4/4 tune. I was told that Bobby beat his foot to the clave, which I don't know if you know. You must know what that is, right?
Well, I mean, there's different claves. Is it?
Oh, sure, yeah.
But
yeah,
was it like the Cuban clave kind of thing?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And so when I saw the band playing, I took a look at his foot. Damn, he was playing with that. He was beating his foot to the clave, and that was. I never tried to get that together.
But what was it about it that it made the music to you so infectious? At that time, and it wasn't just you, believe me. Mark Levine talks about it, and there was a huge movement going on the West Coast that was entirely different. How would you describe the clave? How would you describe why it just kind of gripped people at that time?
Well, I don't know if it was at that time in particular. I can't really say. I'm not a historian, so I don't really know the depth of all this stuff. But the thing that's always gotten me about Latin music is that, like rock and roll, it's a static kind of rhythm. It goes da 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 da. It's even rhythm. Whereas in jazz, it's a syncopated rhythm, so it goes da 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 da. Right. So the Latin is doing the same thing as rock and roll. Ballpark. We're talking here, and what's different about the Latin is because of the clave, the beat that falls on the 4th beat, 1, 2, 3, boom, 1, 2, 3, boom. The chords that are associated with that attack are actually for the following bar, for the following measures. That means that they're actually anticipating the chord by 1 full beat. Whereas a lot of the music in jazz is they're anticipating by, eighth notes, so half a beat, but they do it by a whole beat, which to me, that's why that music has a swinging feeling to it. It's even, but yet it swings because they get to the chord one beat early. That's one way to think about it.
Well, I've been having a lot of discussions with my friends who are doing similar stuff. They're kind of inventing their own clave, but you're right. It's always accentuated on the next bar of music, which is pushes it ahead. And I wanted to ask you, I mean, in your mind, what did the hand drum do for jazz? I mean, I tend to think of it that it urbanized it, but what was the first time you saw those hand drums really incorporated, not in a salsa setting, but in kind of a jazz setting?
Well, again, that's a little fuzzy. You know, that I met Don Elias, early on in my trajectory of education. When I was at Berkeley, I met him, and then finally, that was actually the first band that I played in that I would say was a real professional. My first professional gig was it was a Stone Latin gig. It wasn't Latin jazz, although, you know, we with Mark Levine on piano and Don, we loved jazz, and we would jam and do those kinds of things together. But basically, it was really dance music is what we were playing. And I guess it could have been during some of those jam sessions, but the first time that I really remember that happening, although really not that strongly when you think of real jazz, was that when I moved to New York after a couple of years of being there, I got a job with Nina Simone, and the drummer wasn't working out, and I recommended Don, and he came on the gig playing traps as well as conga drums, and Nina, I wouldn't say was a real jazz person, but we'd swing, you know, and sometimes he'd be playing conga drums and he'd be swinging that thing. And but when it really exploded for me, first-hand experience was when I got the job with Elvin Jones, and I got Don to come and play with us, and he did a bunch of recordings with us, and we toured together, and that was one of the most amazing things to see him playing even beats against Elvin swinging, and he made it fit.
Oh, my God.
Which was, I mean, I don't know if, how many conga drummers out there who could actually do that. He was a very, very special guy because he loved it all. He loved the funk. You know, we'd play funk and Latin and swing and whatever, you know. So he was able to make that stuff fit.
You know, we miss people like Don. Thank God Gene Perla is still around. We miss Don Elias. That guy
I'm happy too.
That guy was a monster. And when I listen, and we're going to listen to a lot of it today, but when I hear that stuff, it is just hammer. I mean, it's tasteful. It's not overly bombastic, but it's crackling. And I actually have did he simultaneously like switch back between traps and congas during the jam, or did you have a drummer on certain things too? Like, for instance, I mean, I don't want to jump too far ahead in the interview, but I want to make sure that I know all the personnel going into these things. Let's listen to Los Muchachos. This is a band. Was that the name of the band or the name of the tune?
No, that was the name of the band.
The name of the band, the only Latin jazz band in the Boston area, made up of Mark Levine, Don Elias, Gene Perla, and tell me the leader of the band's name again.
Dick Meza.
Dick Meza. So let's listen to this track and come back and talk.
We had a fifth guy in the band, and he played mostly timbales. His name was Skip Tosi.
Let's listen to this and come back and talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now it makes sense because those were timbales that I was hearing.
Yeah.
Will you talk a little bit about, the kinds of, the kind of clubs that you would, were you playing in salsa clubs in Boston, or were you playing at the workshop, or where were you playing?
No, it was a commercial band. So it wasn't the kind of band that put on shows. We were really a dance band. That's what we were there, and there was a contingent of Bostonites that would come out we worked 6 nights a week. Oh boy, those days. 6 nights a week after week after week, and we worked for, I guess, altogether it was probably about a year and a half, and then I moved to New York and the band split up. But we'd play these Latin dance clubs, where they would have some food and drinks and a big dance floor, and that's what we did.
And Dick Meza, Mark talked about living down the block from him, but you went to the Berklee School of Music and the New England Conservatory. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you were in Boston. Talk a little bit about the Berklee School of Music when you were there. It's very different, obviously, today. But how did you what did you think of the education there? Was it something that was you had kind of wanted to go on the street and learn and just gig and play, or was there was also instructors there that gave you a lot of input?
Oh man, I tell you what, when I realized that I wanted to do music as a life's work, I looked around to see, where I could get educated, because I really didn't understand music at all. Although I played classical piano for 10 years when I was a kid, I really didn't, I could look at notes and read the notes, but I didn't know anything about harmony. I had no idea what people were doing. I was just loved listening to the jazz records that I was listening to at the time, and decided to get some education. And I went to looked around. At that time there were only 2 schools. One was Berklee, and the other is North Texas State, where they have the big band stuff, and that's still going. There was another school out in California called Westlake. I think that's what it was called, but it was short-lived. And so I went to Berklee, and it was a very small operation. We were in a converted, I guess a townhouse you'd call it, in downtown Boston. And it was really like, going into bedrooms that they made in the classrooms. And there were not many of us, and pretty much everybody, no, not exactly, but most of us knew each other. It wasn't that big. And it was very intimate. There was a lot of interaction with small groups and playing in big bands, and a lot of theory and ear training and solfege, all that stuff. I was voracious to learn that. And it really was wonderful. And then there was the jam sessions on the outside.
Also,
it was wonderful, and just a little bit more, just to say that I had a wonderful. And you've probably heard this already, and you'll probably hear it again. But because of one fellow in particular, Herb Pomeroy, was just a fabulous experience. And also there was another guy who came a little bit later after I was there already, John Laporta. Just fabulous educators, and just from being around them, it was really more like the approach and how to think about it, rather than practicing the scales.
And then the thing that that I've been vigorously researching as I interview my heroes in jazz is just the idea, like you said, the idea of the live session, the ability to get out and get your sound out there and get your security to be on stage. Right now, I think in the jazz community now, there's a supply and demand issue. A ton of great musicians, not enough places to play, and that was kind of one of those things where back then you could really get your chops together.
Yeah, and as I said a little bit earlier, I mean, the jobs that I had when I first came to New York, well, there was that Los Muchachos thing to start with, although that's commercial, so those things still go on. The hotels still have bands that play every night. But in terms of jazz, when I got to New York and started working with various artists on a regular basis, we were working 6 nights a week. The 7th night you'd travel to the next gig and work another 6 nights. And that was a wonderful opportunity to get things together. When you're playing 6 nights a week, boy, there's a lot of development going on.
And you were playing 6 nights a week, and it wasn't necessarily always with the same group, right? I mean, you were playing with different cats.
Well, no. If I was with a band that was doing 6 nights a week, that would be, we'd be traveling together. We were touring.
Wow.
So it was always with the same. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what develops. You're playing with the same guys.
I talked to Dick Burke yesterday. He nearly jumped out of his shoes when I told him about the classic Corea Burke trio thing, and he said that must have been done in upstate New York. They recorded a 4-hour concert of some sort with you guys, and he goes, I think it was with Joe Farrell. I'm not sure, but the Dick has been a big support of my show, and I love his stuff that he did with Billie Holiday, and I obviously love when he was with Cal Jader. But for the audience, the idea of a young Chick Corea, a young Gene Perla, and Dick Burke playing in a trio, we're going to check it out, come back and talk about it, okay?
Okay.
Gene Perla, take us through it, please.
Phew, boy. I mean, do you hear that kid playing that piano? Jeez.
What I heard was 3 guys that were feeling it out, and when they got it, it just got deep.
Yeah. Well, there's some inside stuff about that story, but I'm not going to share that with you on the air.
We can't go on the air with that one?
Yeah, we're going to leave that alone. I don't want Chick to get angry with me.
But how was Chick? Chick was real young at that point.
Yeah, I don't know how old he was, but, he was, I mean, he was just, I mean, this is before anything major happened for him.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, when you were there, I mean, it was just, in the late 60s, we're going to go to a news break in a couple minutes, but it was Joe Farrell, it was who were your soulmates in the late '60s in the New York area when you moved down there?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I moved to New York area in '66. In '67, I moved into the city down the Bowery, and I had a loft down there. I moved my grand piano in, and I had a set of drums, so I was all set to go. The very first night I was there, I called Elias. I said, "I got this loft. Come on down." He did. He got on a bus from Providence. He came down. Unbeknownst to me, he called Chick because they grew up together around the Boston area. And around midnight, my door knocked, and I went over there, and there was Chick. I'd never met him before, with Joe Farrell, and they came in. We had a jam session. That was the first night in New York.
And that was arranged by Elias.
We arranged by Elias, and I evidently Chick liked the way I played because he invited me to come to his home in Queens, and for I don't know how many months, God, it must have been 6 or 7 months, I'd go out there 2-3 times a week and rehearse with him, jam, and just it was wonderful. And this recording, this gig up in Albany, New York, was a product of some of that.
We're talking with just an incredible, legendary bass player, Gene Perla, a power show bass player, also someone that can use finesse and beauty, but a guy, when we come back, we're just going to be dropping bombs every which way. This interview is for Jeremy Steig, for Don Elias, and for all those who love jazz, power jazz, electric funk jazz. Gene, hang tight. We're going to go to a news break at the bottom here, come back and do a whole lot more, okay?
All right, see you.
All right, this is the Jake Feinberg Show. Hang tight.
CNN Radio. I'm Barbara Hall. More sex abuse allegations are surfacing against another sports organization. This time, former players in the Amateur Athletic Union in Memphis, Tennessee, are accusing the group's president, Bobby Dodd, of molesting them decades ago when he was a youth basketball coach. CNN's George Howell has details.
The investigation comes after 2 former players, now grown men, came forward to ESPN's Outside the Lines, alleging that Dodd touched them inappropriately when they were teenagers playing for one of his teams here in Memphis.
The full ESPN story is slated to air tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. 6 Republican presidential candidates will face off in a debate tonight in Iowa. It comes less than 3 weeks before the Iowa caucuses. 3 women share this year's Nobel Peace Prize. They were recognized for their fight to win women's rights in West Africa and the Arab world. This is CNN Radio.
For over 150 years, Tag Heuer Swiss luxury watches has brilliantly fused technology with design. And Jared the Galleria of Jewelry has an incredible selection to choose from.
That's Jared!
Time and again, Tag Heuer has revolutionized watchmaking with luxury sport timepieces, including the sleek avant-garde Link collection and the vintage glamour of the Carrera heritage. Now at Jared.
It can only be Jared!
Find a Jared store or shop anytime at jared.com.
Jay Farner here. Happy holidays from Quicken Loans. We're proud to announce that for the 2nd year in a row, J.D. Power & Associates ranked Quicken Loans highest in customer satisfaction in primary mortgage origination. Interest rates are still historically low. The rate today on a 30-year fixed mortgage is an amazing 3.875%, APR 4.17%. Take a few minutes out of your busy day. Call Quicken Loans at 800-970-2611.
For J.D. Power & Associates award information, visit jdpower.com. Call us for cost information. Equalizing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Men accept a lot of things that seem to come with age, like gaining fat, feeling down, a low sex drive. But these things aren't always age-related. It could be due to a natural decline in your testosterone levels. Call for a risk-free trial of Ageless Male. Ageless Male is all natural, and it's clinically shown to raise testosterone by 61% and maintain healthy, normal levels. Just call 800-725-2506. That's 800-725-2506. Call 800-725-2506.
Mortgages should be illegal because you're getting robbed every month. With a typical $200,000 30-year mortgage, you'll end up paying over $400,000 after interest. Hi, I'm John Commuta, creator of the Transforming Debt into Wealth system. My proven system can eliminate your mortgage and all your debts. Let me send you a powerful free CD. For your free CD, call 1-800-942-9529. 1-800-942-9529. 1-800-942-9529.
Folks, this is Jake Feinberg. When it came time to decide where to buy my daughter a piano last year, the choice was easy. We got it at Hackenberg & Sons Piano Company. Located at 4333 East Broadway Boulevard, Hackenberg & Sons is Tucson's longest-running family-owned piano business. Run by three brothers and a son, they pride themselves on superior instruments and customer satisfaction. It's why they've been around so long. And it's why their pianos are used at the University of Arizona, Pima Community College, and many other prestigious institutions. So whether it's for your child, business, or yourself, when you buy a piano, make sure you go to Hackenberg & Sons. It'll be the beginning of a long-lasting partnership. For more information, visit them at hackenbergpiano.com. Folks, stress is at an all-time high in the Western world. Physical release of that stress is a major way to adjust your frame of mind. Deep body massage expert Shuli Shu is Tucson's most artful and soothing therapist. Doesn't matter. Deep tissue, prenatal, or Swedish massages, Shuli can do it all at an affordable price. Each session lasts an hour and is only $40. Contact Shuli Shu at 270-3452 for the massage of your life. Professional massage therapist Shuli Shu at 270-3452. Check her out today and loosen up. In this day and age, people have a lot to protect. You want to know that when you're insuring valuable goods, you have an agent you can trust. Craig Pretzinger is that agent. For auto, home, and life insurance, the Pretzinger Agency is Tucson's most honest and flexible insurance company. Have off-road vehicles or motorhomes? Pretzinger can cover that as well. Pretzinger Agency at 299-5810, located across the street from Sullivan Steakhouse on the southwest corner of River and Campbell. Trust, compassion, and service. The whole package at Pretzinger Agency. Call 299-5810 or text QUOTE to 602-459-5533 to receive a no-obligation.
Owner Jeff Brucker has over 40 years' experience as an electronic technician, and he is happy to bring back the joy and memories only your music collection provides. Log on to stereohospital.com or call 722-4610, or just bring that mean old stereo in today. Stereo Hospital at 4044 East Speedway, inside Metronome Music near Alvernon, to calm the beast.
Good. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Be a part of a new coalition with Jake Feinberg. The second half of my show starts right now. Welcome back, everybody, to the Jake Feinberg Show. Joined here today by bass player Gene Perla. Gene, thanks for sitting through all those subsidies, and let's get back to work, huh?
I'm ready.
I wanted to ask you, when did you first happen on the electric bass?
I was at Berkeley when I wanted to be a piano player. As I mentioned to you, I took 10 years of classical piano. And when I went to Berkeley, that was my goal, was to be Bill Evans #2. And I was working on that thing. I mean, I was kind of a goof in my life prior to that time at Berkeley when I realized I wanted to do music. And I would sit at that piano on the weekends. I'd play 10 hours, no joke. I mean, I'd just, get up, go to the bathroom, get a bite to eat, come back, play the piano, 10 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours. And I did it for quite a number of months. And then it started to dawn on me that I just don't have the brain to handle it, So one night, a friend of mine said, "Hey, this new record came out. Come on over. I wanted you to check it out." And it was Ornette's "The Shape of Jazz to Come." So there was no chordal instrument on it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I heard that bass going. I said, "That's for me, one note at a time." So I was 24 years old at the time, kind of late to get started, but I went and bought a cheapy K bass. It's a manufacturer, K, and started to break my hands on that thing. And around the same time, I picked up an electric, and they were kind of in tandem. Yeah.
Who were the first cats that you were that really, you were one of the guys that brought the electric bass into jazz. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
Who were your peers? I mean, along the same lines that you. I mean, and who were they? And then talk about how you guys would trade kind of ideas musically, and then getting together and just talking about it, because it was relatively. I mean, you're going from the acoustic bass, which we heard with you playing with Chick and Dick Burke, and then there's this whole revolution. And if you could talk about that a little bit, I really would love that.
Well, if you're talking about bass players getting together and talk, there weren't any. I don't remember sitting down and talking with bass players. I mean, we were far and few between, and not many of the jazzers were playing electric bass. So I was kind of on my own. I didn't really listen to anybody, but I always listened to music, so I was hearing funk and, that kind of stuff, and I would hear some of these bass players, what they were doing, and I think they were probably more of an influence on me than any of the jazzers, because there really weren't any, not until a little bit later, and then, guys like Stanley Clarke came along and then kind of blew the roof off the whole thing.
When you say funk, you mean kind of like James Jamerson, the James Brown stuff you were listening to?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And then so just to set the scene, because this is the Jake Feinberg idiosyncrasy obsession with Gene Perla. Take me through, the idea of collaborating Elias, Jan Hammer, and Jeremy Steig. How did you all sync up, and what was sort of the mission? You guys just went and said, let's just start chopping wood.
Boy, it was a pretty fuzzy. I mean, now
I'm sure it's fuzzy. I'm sure it's fuzzy.
It was really. I mean, it is fuzzy thinking back, because there was so much stuff going on. I mean, I kind of, as soon as I moved to New York, and I kind of rose to the top of the bass players' availability, and I was working, 6, 7, 8 gigs a week, sometimes even more. I mean, I was just constantly busy, and I'd have to talk it over with Hammer. Maybe he remembered, but somehow we ran into Jeremy. I think I may have run into him first, and then I brought Elias in, and then Jan Hammer, because we were living together, and I don't know, one thing developed into the next. Jeremy had the gigs, and we did some recording, and that's what it was.
One of the things I like to do, because guys like Steiger, I read his dad's books to my daughter, but Jeremy's gone. He's left us, and so is Don, for that matter.
What? No, Jeremy's still around.
Jeremy's here.
Well, the last I heard, he moved to Japan, married a Japanese girl, and he moved there, I don't know, less than a year ago, as far as I know.
I'm married to an Asian woman, too. He's a brilliant guy. Now, I was going to say, talk a little bit about Jeremy, his personality, and I'm looking at the album Fusion that was produced by Sonny Lester, that you guys were on, and he's an intense looking guy, and I was just wondering what your relationship with him was like, and how it all kind of meshed together with the band, because the music, I mean, when you listen to the music, you guys were having a lot of fun.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they were. I mean, that record, if you listen to them, listen to those songs, they were really extremely simple songs, basically on one chord for the most part, and we worked the feel, and all of us were into the feel of it, and not being so concerned with being pyrotechnic, just to get that groove happening. And I think we were fairly successful at it. Yeah.
Absolutely. We got it. Unfortunately, that was a profound statement. That was we have some problems with the Vonage phone there. But listen, let's listen to this track, Sister Andrea, and that you were so nice enough to give me, and we'll come back and we'll go through it. Okay.
Okay.
That's why I do this show. That's why I do this show, because of that blazing inferno of music right there. Okay. Billy Cobham was on that session, but when I listen to your bass playing, I hear a lot of R&B and soul in that track.
Yeah, well, that's what I told you. That's why I listen to those guys. And some of them I got to hear, not many of them, but I got to hear some of that music live, because when Don and I were with Nina Simone, we'd do these, mini festival things, and there'd be some soul, acts and R&B acts on there sometimes. So I got to watch these guys play.
When you say soul, you mean like guys like Donny Hathaway, Curtis Mayfield, those kinds of guys?
Yeah, sure. And I don't remember. There was, it was again kind of a fuzzy time. We were doing a lot of traveling and
a lot of partying too.
Oh yeah, well.
I was going to say, this says engineer was Edwin Kramer. It says, with special thanks to Edwin Kramer for his psychedelic engineering and musician's ear.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. And then, you progressed on, and you had your own record label, and you started working with Elvin Jones, and I do not want to gloss over Elvin at all, but you put together the Stone Alliance, which was you, Steve Grossman, and Don Elias. And I when you first sent me the tracks, I didn't know what to think of them. And then when I started to hear them, my skull almost blew off my head. I mean, it sounds to me like the last bridge, or that's where music needs to go. There needs to be a bridge from that music into the 2012 situation. When I listen to that stuff, I'm not very fond necessarily of trios. But when I hear the power sessions that were going on with you guys, it was extremely it was fiery. And did you just what were your expectations going in? You just cut it loose and let it go. Can you talk about that group for a minute?
Well, I just want to back up real quick because you mentioned Eddie Kramer. I just wanted to tell you a story about that. Go ahead. When we did that Fusion Energy, it was the original album. It was called Energy, with Jan Hammer and Don Elias and myself and Jeremy Steig. Eddie was the co-producer and engineer of that recording, and it was done at Electric Lady Studio, which was owned by Jimi Hendrix. And after the recording, I think it was about 2 days afterwards, Jeremy and I went by to pick up cassettes. You remember them?
I love analog cassettes. Oh, I still have it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we picked up these cassettes, so we could listen to the rough tracks, see how we did, and when we were there, Eddie said, oh, by the way, he said, when I was mixing this, doing a rough mix on it, he said, Jimmy walked in, and he was listening for a while, and then he said to me, he asked me, he says, who are these guys? So Eddie told him who we were, and then Jimmy said, well, I'm going to England. He said, when I come back, I want to play with these guys. And the guy never came back from England.
Oh.
Oh, man, I could have been a rock and roll star.
Well, just to hear that, I mean, in some ways, that's almost like a fantasy that it's the gift that keeps on giving. I can't imagine the explosive energy. That's what it is. It's the ability of people to play together. It's not the digit. That's what I said at the intro. It's not about one. It's not a one-man band. It's about guys that love each other and that are really moving and grooving. And it's the intimacy of the music within the human context. That's what we have to get back to in order to recalibrate this kind of stuff.
Well, I'll repeat what I said earlier, and what we worked on, and what I continue to work on is the feeling.
It's all the feeling. And speaking of the feeling, let's get to King Tut. We'll run this for a little bit. I want to come back. So this is the grooviest thing I've heard in a long time. So let's hit it.
Cool.
I'd run through the whole track, but we're running out of time here. So, who was playing? Don was playing congas, and who's?
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of this stuff. What happened was that we played it just as a trio: electric bass, saxophone, and drums. And then he overdubbed all the percussion. Well, basically bongos and congas. And he was a master at that. I mean, he as he could fit with Alvin, he could fit with anything.
You know, it's one of those things where I need to go back, and it's one of those albums that I kind of avoided for a long time because my ear wasn't prepared for it. Mm-hmm. But it was the Live at the Lighthouse with Elvin and you and Liebman, Grossman, and I'm not sure if Don's on that album or not.
No, he's not. No, that was just a quartet.
The power, I think it was just too explosive for me. But I love the urban feel with the Middle East. I mean, you were just carving that Middle Eastern touch through the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And it's lacking now. I mean, actually, you know, Gene, talk a little bit about in your teaching now when you talk to kids. Are you hearing some of this sort of organic kind of loose feeling stuff, or is it too? How do you break that technical kind of grind that we seem to find ourselves in?
Well, there's I mean, I can't profess to say that I know what's going on because there's so much of it all over the planet. But from the little bit that I'm exposed to, whether it's in school or once in a while I go to a club, people are approaching it from a gazillion different vantage points. You know, they're coming in from way different places. People are searching around trying to find stuff. A lot of them keep playing the same old crap over and over again, but there are a lot of people who are trying to stretch, you know. And what I find gratifying is, for instance, there's a very nice jazz club around here called the Deer Head Inn, and I was up there a couple of nights ago. And Bill Goodwin, the great drummer, was playing there. Adam Nywood, Jerry Nywood's son, who's a fabulous saxophonist. I think he's beyond his dad. He's really tremendous. And anyway, there was this young bass player there, and this kid was, I was so heartened for me to see him working on the feeling. He was really, I could sense that he was really trying to work on the feeling, and it wasn't about technique. And he had technique, because when he'd take a solo, I could see that he had technique, but it wasn't, he wasn't expressing the technique as an end. He was really concentrating on music, thinking about melody, thinking about how, you know, the trajectory of the phrases that he would play could be musical. Anyway, that's what I got out of it, and it's so nice to hear that people are still trying to do that.
I'm talking to Gene Perla, amazing bass player. Gene, I'd like to do another session with you and talk a little bit about your relationship with Elvin Jones, because you guys, you did a lot of his albums, and you also played a lot with him, and it's just, I'm fascinated about this period of time in the early 70s, and I believe that I want to form a bridge to the future in music. And there's a lot in there, and I don't want to gloss over it, but I just can't thank you enough. I hope that we did justice to the music today, and I look forward to collaborating with you in the future, my friend.
Yeah, I look forward to another shot. I like to yak.
Absolutely, Gene. Take care, buddy, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye, Jake.
This is the Jake Feinberg program, everybody. We'll see you next week, each and every Saturday at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. And next week we have the incredible drummer Harvey Mason on the program, who is just going to blow the roof off the place. And then we have a couple of holiday shows as well. We have a Christmas Eve special show, which is to be determined. And then on New Year's Eve, a very, very special program with Pat Martino, who was the impetus and the guy who actually was my first guest and allowed me to start this whole trip that I've been on, the latest chapter, Gene Perla. We'll see you next week, everybody. This is KJLL 1330 The Jolt, The Jake Feinberg Show.
Just a night. Mall, South Tucson.
CBS News, I'm Sam Litzinger. We'll have a chance for the GOP presidential contenders to score some points with voters. CBS News correspondent